In the 16th century, a man with a gold-hooped earring and a little goatee picked up a quill and wrote some of the finest sonnets the world has ever seen. 500 years later, a man with nothing better to do sits down with a microphone and tries to work out what the hell that bloke was going on about. Welcome to the final couplet. Well, hello there, and welcome back to the final couplet with me. You guessed it, Theo Cowan, same host every week, so why would it be someone else this time? Maybe 1 week I'll get someone else to do it and see if you notice. But for the meantime, you still have me. Can you guess what we're going to do today? That's right, you guessed it. Well, I hope you guessed it. We're going to have a look at one of Shakespeare's sonnets, specifically Sonnet 44, a classic in the world of sonnets. Is it? I don't know. I haven't read it yet, but we're about to find out. Now, the previous 5-6 sonnets have really taken us on a journey. If you haven't listened to the last few episodes, Shakespeare has been in this crazy love triangle with his mistress and his best mate / lover. And now it appears Shakespeare is, well, he's taken himself off. He's taken himself away to a distant land, or maybe just the countryside. Although most of England was the countryside at that time, it feels. Like London was that tiny, wasn't it, really? Look at it now. Bloody massive. But back then, not that big. That's a nice little history lesson for you there. Anyway, Shakespeare's gone away and he's sending these sonnets from afar to his lover. And at this point, I'm lost as to who his lover is. I think it's still his best mate. But jury's out on that one. And I know everyone at home will be screaming into their, or whatever they're listening to this on, and they'll be going, the sonnets aren't linked. They're not linked. They're all meant to be separate. But you know what? I disagree. I think they are all linked, and they all have a common thread, and it's fun to make a story out of them. And if you're denying me fun, then shame on you. And on that sour note, let's dive in to Sonnet 44. If the dull substance of my flesh were thought, injurious distance should not stop my way. For then, despite of space, I would be brought from limits far remote where thou dost stay. No matter then, although my foot did stand upon the farthest earth removed from thee, for nimble thought can jump both sea and land, as soon as think the place where he would be. But thought kills me, that I am not thought, to leap large lengths of miles when thou art gone, but that so much of earth and water wrought, I must attend time's leisure with my moan, receiving noughts by elements so slow, but heavy tears, badges of either's woe. Wow, initial thoughts are that he's still a bloody long way away from his lover here, and he's sending the sonnets from afar to express himself. I don't know why, but when I hear this sonnet and the last one, I sort of imagine Shakespeare in this little hut, maybe in the Highlands in Scotland, with a little fire and nothing for company but his quill and ink. It's quite romantic, really, but he does seem quite tortured, doesn't he, in these sonnets? Where's the love triangle? Bring the love triangle back. Now we're just on to sad Shakespeare writing these long-distance sonnets. I mean, in many ways, it's an example of a long-distance relationship, isn't it? And we know that they're quite hard to maintain. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it works out for Shakespeare. Right, let's dive into Sonnet 44 and work out what the hell Shakespeare was going on about line by line. If the dull substance of my flesh were thought, Injurious distance should not stop my way. So here he's saying, if I were made up of thought and not flesh, then this distance between us wouldn't actually be a problem. So we're already kicking off with quite an interesting concept of Shakespeare imagining himself as thought itself. Maybe he'd smoked a bit of the wacky-backy, the marijuana, which apparently they did actually find in his back garden in Stratford. I seem to remember an article about that years ago, which makes a lot of sense, you know. If a lot of his writing was influenced by marijuana. When you think about it, it does make sense. And the rest probably, you know. What else was there? Opium was knocking about at that time. Maybe that had an influence on some plays. I mean, Midsummer Night's Dream can't have been done sober, could it? Anyway, I digress. For then, despite of space, I would be brought from limits far remote where thou dost stay. So, if I were thought itself, then the distance between us wouldn't matter at all, because I could just jump any distance instantly and be with you. No matter then, although my foot did stand upon the farthest earth removed from thee, for nimble thought can jump both sea and land as soon as think the place where he would be. Which is basically the same point again, I'd say. Probably didn't need to say these lines. If you're looking to cut some bits down from this Shakespeare, if you're listening, probably don't say the same thing twice. That's classic. I mean, I was taught that in English in secondary school. Don't repeat yourself. Anyway, here he is repeating himself. He's saying, you know, even if you're bloody miles away, I'm so nimble. Well, if I were thought, I'm so nimble, I can just jump across the sea and land and be with you. Which is true, to be fair. I mean, if I now, in my house in London, if I think of the Caribbean, I'm there. There I am. I'm in the Caribbean. So he's got a point. But thought kills me when I am not thought, to leap large lengths of miles when thou art gone. So here he's saying, but it's annoying because I'm not thought, so I can't jump across the sea and land and stuff. I'm just me. I'm fleshy old me, Shakespeare. And I can't get to you. And that sucks. But that's so much of earth and water wrought, I must attend time's leisure with my moan. So here he's bringing in the elements. You know, we got earth and we got water. He's saying, you know, I'm not thought. I'm full of so much earth and water that I have to sit around and moan instead. I can't just nimbly jump across to you. And I did read somewhere that there was this thing about, you know, people believed that the elements were within everyone. So he's saying, you know, I am earth and water. That's what's in me. And now for the final couplet. Receiving noughts by elements so slow, but heavy tears, badges of either's woe. So here, usually he likes to sum up the sonnet in the final couplet, but this one he doesn't really. He sort of just finishes it off. I mean, it's still the same point, but he's not exactly summarising it, is he? He's saying, I get nothing from these elements that are slow, these slow elements, earth and water, both the slow elements, they're not like air, right? And fire, they're quite thought of as quite quick. So I get nothing from these slow elements but heavy tears and badges of either's woe. So, you know, we're both upset about the situation that we're in. We're both upset about the long distance relationship. And of course, back then, you know what? This might come as news to you, but they didn't have telephones. So you couldn't just get on the old blower and ring up your lover. Not going to happen. You're going to have to deliver a sonnet or a message, and that will take days. Weeks, dare I say. Depends how far away you are. So really, it would be a pretty lonely existence when you think about it. I do feel quite sorry for Shakespeare in this situation that he finds himself in, but I do wonder why he's so far apart from this person. Why is he taking himself off to distant lands and having to cross water and stuff? Why not just stay in London? That's a question, isn't it? I guess in my story that I've concocted, the love triangle really threw Shakespeare off and he had to leave because it was all getting a bit much. So maybe that's got some truth in it. Right, let's put this to our story, shall we? If you'll remember, the story so far is that there's been this whole love triangle between Shakespeare, his mistress, and John Donne, his friend and lover, or wannabe lover. And Shakespeare obviously found out about John Donne and his mistress having it off with each other, and he's gone, this is a nightmare. And John Donne said, you know what, go stay in my holiday house, take yourself off, this is all getting a bit much for you. So Shakespeare did that, and he's still thinking about John Donne, he still loves him. So he's been sending him sonnets from afar. And John Donne's been a bit like, oh God, not another bloody sonnet. And in the last episode, Shakespeare sent the sonnet to say how much he missed John Donne, but his silly horse, Hooflet, had taken the sonnet to bloody Ben Jonson, his frenemy. Now Shakespeare doesn't know this, of course. He thinks the sonnet's gone to John Donne, as expected. So that's where we left off. Ben Jonson has just read the sonnet intended for John Donne by William Shakespeare. Let's see what his reaction is and how Sonnet 44 fits into all this. Ben Jonson finishes reading Sonnet 43. He takes off his little spectacles and wipes his eyes. He thinks, I didn't know Shakespeare felt this way about me. It's come totally out of the blue, to be quite honest. I thought he was into John Donne. But apparently he loves me. And you know what? I can't blame him. I'm a bit of a catch. I'm a good-looking guy. What can I say? And Ben Jonson thinks to himself, yeah, I think I could be with Shakespeare for a little bit. I mean, even if it's just, a one-off bit of sex or, friends with benefits type thing. Although he does seem like he kind of loves me in this sonnet, which is pretty strange. I know what I'll do. I'll write him a little letter back. So he goes up to his desk and he writes a letter to Shakespeare to say, I feel the same way about you, let's give it a go. And he signs it off, forever yours. Pops it in an envelope, gives it to Hooflet, who's been waiting this whole time, and Hooflet, happy with himself, trots off back to Shakespeare in the countryside. When Hooflet returns, Shakespeare sees the letter in his mouth. It's a bit spitty, it's been in his mouth the whole time. And Shakespeare says, oh my God, a letter for me. I knew John Donne would reply. I just knew it. So he opened the letter and read it. He put it down and read it again, a smile coming across his face. He was glowing. John Donne and Shakespeare would be together at last, in peace. He started frantically packing up his things in order to go back to London to see his love, John Donne. Eventually, all packed up, he went outside to begin his journey. But Hooflet was nowhere to be seen. Shakespeare called for Hooflet, but he didn't come. Shakespeare looked at Mercutio as if to say, well, where the hell's Hooflet? How am I going to get out of here if I can't get on my horse? And Mercutio looks up at him as if to go, I don't know, mate. Not my problem. Shakespeare can't believe it. Without Hooflet, he can't leave the cottage. He's on his own. He needs a horse to get out of there, otherwise he'll be walking for weeks, and he might die with no food and water. He spends the next day thinking about John Donne. He must write him a sonnet about how hard it is to be away from him and to be so far away from him. Probably better not tell him that he can't get back to London anytime soon because his horse has gone missing. That's quite an embarrassing situation to be in. So he'll just write about his thoughts and stuff. Once he's finished writing Sonnet 44, he takes it outside to Mercutio, who looks up at him as if to go, "No, not again. I can't deliver another bloody message to London. It took me a week last time and I almost died." And Shakespeare patted him on the head and said, "You know what needs to be done." Mercutio reluctantly took the sonnet from Shakespeare's hand and set off on his way. He walked for a week. Shakespeare, of course, hadn't given him any food or water, so he was parched and hungry as hell. He relied on a few passers-by and other cats to give him some scraps to live off. Eventually he arrived in London and appeared at John Donne's house. John Donne opened the door and saw that bloody cat again, and he thought, why the hell won't Shakespeare leave me alone? Not another sonnet. I didn't write back to the last one. Why has he sent me another one? And Mercutio looks up at him as if to say, "I don't know, mate. I'm just a messenger, but I would love a glass of water and some food, maybe a cracker and some cheese or something like that. Anything. I'll take anything at this point." And John Donne grabs the letter from Mercutio's mouth and slams the door in his face. Mercutio thinks to himself, why the hell do I keep delivering these sonnets for Shakespeare? He treats me like absolute crap. Inside, John Donne opens up Shakespeare's Sonnet 44 and reads, Sonnet 44. If my dull old flesh was made of thought, this annoying distance wouldn't get between us. Despite the distance, even if it was really, really, really far away, I'd bring myself to you. It wouldn't matter if my feet stood on the farthest part of the world from you. My thought is so nimble, it can jump over sea and land as quickly as it can think about the place it wants to be. But bloody hell, it's killing me to think that I'm not made of thought and can't jump over the sea and stuff. I'm actually made of so much earth and water that I must spend my time moaning. I get nothing from these slow elements except for heavy tears. Wow, what a palaver Shakespeare has got himself into here. Ben Jonson thinks that Shakespeare loves him. Shakespeare thinks that John Donne has replied to him and loves him. Couplet has gone missing. And Mercutio is pissed off. What is going to happen next? Find out next week on the final couplet. Until then, bye!